Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Rachel Bussman, and I'm a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources that we have available for families during the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations and treatment by visiting childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, I'd like to continue talking about parenting in the time of the coronavirus with a little bit of focus on you as the parent and your mental health. I'm here to answer your questions, and I have some great questions that were left over from last week, and you can type in questions now, and we will be answering them live. Remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and 4:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we will also be recording these so you can view them later. So we'll get to your questions now. So one of the things that's actually come up a bunch of times in the past week or so is your own anxiety as a parent. And I'm just going to be transparent that my anxiety has gone up and down a bunch of different times in the last couple weeks because this situation is very stressful. And we've talked a lot about what to do for your children and how to incorporate e-learning and how to engage in self-care. But I actually want to take it a little bit deeper and talk about what to do if you're just feeling like you're really struggling or like you're really not sure if you're actually doing okay. So the first thing I would say is that it's really normal to feel a little bit unusual, feel a little bit like things are surreal, a little bit like things are strange, and to feel disconnected. Those are some words that have come up through my conversations with people over the last week or two. So first of all, it's really normal, and you're really not alone in feeling those feelings, even though this experience can feel very lonely. So that's the first thing I'm going to say, is that a lot of the feelings that you might be feeling that maybe change from day to day really are very normal and sort of par for the course in a very stressful situation. The second thing to think about is to really assess if you think you need some help or you need some support. So again, it's really easy for us at the Child Mind Institute to talk about how to help kids. And as parents, oftentimes our primary focus is our children and our family. But if you're finding that you're not sleeping well, or you're really having a difficult time staying focused on tasks that you need to do as a parent, or maybe you're a little more irritable than usual, or finding that you're just not able to focus, it's really important for you as a parent to know that you can reach out. Now, you might be asking, who should I reach out to? And I have a couple of ideas. One is if your child is already in mental health treatment. So maybe your child has a therapist, a clinical psychologist, or a social worker, or a psychiatrist. And maybe your first thought is, well, that's someone for my child. But actually, you are a part of a system that's called a family. And so it's really important that if your child has a therapist, that you reach out to them and say, I know we're talking about my son, Ben, but actually he's doing not so bad right now, but I'm really struggling and I could really just talk about how I'm feeling. Another thing that you could do is maybe your child doesn't have a therapist, but maybe you've had someone you've talked to in the past. It's a great idea, and you should feel really comfortable, even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable, to reach out and say, can we speak? Can we talk? Again, I'll say that for me, I've had some questions for school, or I've had some questions for people in my child's life or our life that I've thought maybe it's not important. Maybe I don't need to reach out right now because there are a lot of other really important questions. And then I was reminded that my son is part of a third grade classroom. So I'm a third grade parent, and my question is just as important as someone else's. So the tip here is do reach out to your healthcare provider or a previous mental health professional if you've ever worked with one. So I've been hearing from a few people saying, hey, I've heard about this thing called telehealth, but I'm not actually sure if my clinician does that. They are a private practitioner, or I don't know how good they are on the internet, or doing these telehealth calls. You can ask. You can actually reach out and say, hey, I'm wondering, do you do telehealth? And if you do, can you tell me how that would work? Because a lot of mental health professionals and healthcare providers are providing telehealth, and a lot of barriers to telehealth are being sort of broken down as we navigate this time. Maybe you don't know where to start. Maybe you're saying, I'd love to do all that, but I don't have a therapist. I don't have a therapist for my child. So what should I do? There are lots of resources, but I'm going to give two resources. The Association for the ADAA, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, ADAA.org, and we're going to write these resources down, is a great resource for depression and anxiety and a lot of helpful resources for adults and teens. So that's a good place to start. They have a find a mental health professional button on their website. Similarly, abct.org, which is this Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies, also has a similar function. You can also, again, if you're just tuning in, find our resources at childmind.org/coronavirus. So it's just really important, and I think it's important to just say that it is okay if you as a parent are struggling and you're not sure how well you're doing. Chances are, one, you're doing the best you can and you're not alone. And it's also really important to know that especially if you're vulnerable to depression or anxiety or other mental health issues, this could be a time that just makes you more vulnerable, and it's important to have support as much as possible. So I do have some questions coming in, and I think it's just important to answer them. So one of the questions that also came up is shifting to kids here, which is, I'm just really tired of this. I'm not really sure how to be the best homeschool parent. How much school should I be doing? How much time should I spend on school? I'm running out of activities. And again, I find it very important to say that me too, I feel the same way. And I actually had a little bit of my own peak in anxiety last night as I got an email from school, which I was both really happy to get because it gave us sort of a preview for the week and what was going to happen for my son in school. But it also piqued my anxiety because it required me to go look at a new schedule, download new pages, make a lot of decisions and process a lot of information. And I actually did something that I thought was really helpful, which is I reached out to my sister, which I think, again, we got to find our village. My sister is 4 years younger, but also has a degree in education and is just an all around supportive person. And I said, am I supposed to do all of this? And she said, hold on a second. You're doing the best you can. Nobody expects you to do all of this learning. Just pick something to do today or for tomorrow for your son, and it will all get done. And she reminded me that she's reached out to her teacher and said, hey, we can only tackle this amount of stuff today. Is that okay? And it brings in the idea of self-compassion and compassion for the teachers and educators, compassion for yourself, that you are doing enough. And if things feel overwhelming, reach out to someone that you know, reach out to someone who might be just having a slightly better day, who can give you a tip to remind you that this is not the only thing that's happening right now. So it's important to know that you are getting guidelines from your school and they might be changing on kind of a daily or weekly basis. And that's actually maybe both frustrating and important because your school is adapting to a situation that we really don't have a landscape for. And so everybody's just really doing the best that they can. Another question that came in to us at the end of last week was, I'm running out of activities. Can we keep doing the same thing? And I actually think this is a great question because I know, again, I've seen lots of links getting sent through some professional resources, and things are being sent through our work-related email, or a family member will post on social media, hey, I found this great website for science projects, or hey, here's a free link to some educational resources. And I actually think those are great, especially for someone who doesn't have a lot of time and is maybe feeling sort of pressured to come up with new and exciting things to do, especially if you don't have a ton of direction from school at that particular time. On the other hand, you don't have to choose to do those things, right? If your child is really happy doing Legos in their free time, which my son happens to be doing, that's what he's doing in his free time. Now, I definitely incorporate when it's nice out, play in the yard, or for those who are living in an apartment, maybe just play right outside the block of the apartment building, but it doesn't have to be a creative endeavor every single time. So again, I think that balance of maybe trying to incorporate some new things, but actually doing some of the same activities is really fine. And then maybe finding a slight way to mix it up a little bit. Another thing that I'll say about doing the same activities is that for younger kids, repetition and consistency is really helpful. So actually, if your school is doing a morning meeting or a community meeting, ours is doing announcements via recorded video every day, it's actually a nice way to start the day or to have some kind of consistency throughout the day in these little snippets of the same activity, because it actually provides some consistency. For older kids, maybe you're running out of activities, but this is a nice opportunity to say to older kids and definitely teenagers, you know what? Are you saying you're bored? I think I've heard that word bored a lot, certainly in my house, and I've felt it. And also it is boring to be home. But that is an opportunity where you can say to maybe your teenager, you're probably better on all this technology than I am. Find something that you think will be interesting to do. If your child's interested in arts, there are lots of arts related content on there. If your child's interested in music, I'm sure you can find some music related things too. Or use some materials around the house that need to be recycled and created into some kind of project. So there are lots of different activities you can do, and you don't necessarily have to come up with all of the ideas. Another thing I'll say before I go to a next question is that I've talked to another family that I know, and they actually have decided to work together in two households and sort of do that as their partner family. So what I mean is that one household, which actually is a single parent with twins, and another family with similar age children and a two-parent household, while they can't actually get together per se, they are sort of doing some divide and conquer kind of activities. So one parent or one adult in one household will take the lead on a particular activity or set of assignments, and it'll switch and vice versa. And that particular family, because they live close, they can also go outside in their yard, and even while they're practicing social distance, they've sort of created their own little village that is allowing to share responsibility, and certainly for that single parent who's working full-time at home, be able to kind of share that burden with other families. Please do feel free to type in any questions, because again, if you type them in and we don't get to them, we will certainly answer them later. And if you're just joining us, remember that we are talking about parenting in the time of coronavirus, and you can certainly reach us on our website to get some materials, coronavirus or childmind.org/coronavirus. Another question that has up is related to disruptive behavior. So one question that we got at the end of last week is, my child is acting out a little bit and really typically act out. Is that normal? I'm trying to really have a conversation, explain to them about the situation, and they just are continuing to act out. What should I do? So again, this is a great question, and it's really not uncommon for kids, especially younger kids, to act out, and I'll define what that means in a second, when things have changed, when there's a change in routine, especially children that are under the age of 5, but certainly children older than that, might struggle with the current situation, but not be able to put that into words. So they might have more difficulty at bedtime, or have a lot of pushback or trying to negotiate during a time, and they normally do fine around getting in the bath or eating a meal. And this is both, as I think you'll notice from the message, that there are pieces of both and, meaning it's both probably normal that this is happening and the acting out is happening, and there are things you can do about it. One of the things that's not such a great idea is to try to over-explain or get into a debate with your child, especially when they are a bit frustrated or you need them to do something. So if your child is acting out a little bit or really some pushback around bedtime or a mealtime, it's very tempting to say, look, Andrew, this is a serious time. Like, I need you to really help mom, help dad, buckle down and just get your work done. But that is really not going to be so helpful because a child has an understanding, but a limited understanding. And that's not necessarily going to motivate them to do what they need to do. We go back to what we know around just like good limit setting and setting really good behavioral expectations. We actually have language. Say something like, Andrew, I know you really don't want to take a bath right now. Right now it's time for a bath. Give you a choice. Do you want to take a bath or shower? And then really that's it. And again, we could talk on a different time about what that escalates, but really just giving clear, simple instructions or just start walking towards the shower and saying, I'm going to go ahead and turn the water on, can be a much more effective strategy than trying to get into a back and forth. I love this question that's coming in right now. So thank you to the question that says, how can I motivate teens to do optional online learning? Well, that's a really good question, right? Optional really has that word optional in there. And so I think it's a tough one because on one hand, I don't know about you, but I love my son to do every optional activity, and that's just not going to happen. But on the other hand, we really want our teenagers to be self-directed and independent. So my thought would be to have a conversation. And so maybe you say to your teenager, Sarah, so there's a list here of a lot of things that need to happen. And these things are must-dos, and these things all say optional. I'm curious, how many optional things do you want to do? Maybe Sarah says, I want to do 0 optional ones because optional means I don't have to do it. And you might say, great, so I'm going to write that down. You'd like to do 0. In this family, making this up, but I might say in my family, so in this family, do 0 optional, it leaves me a little wanting more. So I see 10 optional. I would love you this week to do 3 optional. And have a back and forth with your teenager. Again, a negotiation with a teenager is a little bit more allowed. It allows for what I would call a conversation back and forth. Let's hear your idea. Let's hear my idea.